If you're just joining us, welcome to Creating a Sense of Belonging in your online course. Okay. So if all of you could find the little chat icon down at the bottom of your screen, your name's going to pop up, but throw me an emoji for your mood. Let me know what you teach, or if you don't teach, let me know what your role is at NIU. And then what are your hopes for this workshop? And again, if you don't like typing in the chat, you can always hop on the microphone. I apologize in advance if I mispronounce anyone's name. Please let me know if I get it wrong. Looks like we've got from Chi Chen Lee. I teach accounting. You teach an online accounting graduate course, and you hope to learn new ways to engage students. Oh, this is so funny. I think I have an example in here about accounting. So I will endeavor to help you with that. Jake's a TA for anthropology. You hope to get a better grasp on different forms of instruction outside of a standard classroom setting. Great. Most of us start off teaching face to face and then we transition to online teaching. So that's a great place to be. All right. There may still be some more coming in, but I'm going to go ahead and just kind of move on. All right. So this is what I have on the agenda for you, just so you know how this is broken up. I want to establish a definition for what is student belonging. After that, I'm going to give you some strategies for what you can do to prepare your course. We're kind of staging this environment for student belonging. There are things that we can do even before we start interacting with our students. So since this is the start of a semester, this is, a great time to implement some of these ideas. I then want to get into the actual teaching strategies, the pedagogy of how to cultivate student belonging. And of course, everybody always wants to know, well, how do I do this, in Blackboard or with my technology? So I specifically have technology tips for you towards the end of this workshop. And the formal Q&A is at the end as well, but feel free to ask questions along the way. Oh, and I do see we have one more in the chat. Ms. Sumit Ikhter, and you teach first year composition course and you're a graduate teaching assistant and you're going to teach online next semester. Excellent. Okay. Well, I love that we have a diversity here of disciplines and teaching experience. So I think this will be fun. All right, so we have to establish a definition of belonging before we can discuss strategies. So there is no right or wrong answer. Let me know what you think, but what comes to mind when you think of belonging? You can again just throw that in the chat. Oh, I like these answers. Connection, feeling safe or included. Yes. Wonderful. So as I was going about trying to determine what is a good definition for the sake of our workshop for student belonging, I found out that there is a difference between an inclusive classroom and student belonging. So an inclusive classroom is a classroom in which all students, irrespective of their abilities and or skills, are welcomed holistically. So I thought that was kind of interesting. It is closely tied to student belonging, but there was a slight difference of definition. Now, if we want to talk about student belonging, it's the extent to which students feel personally accepted, respected, included, and supported by others in the school social environment. So I think all of these keywords that you're tossing into the chat have kind of been included here. And so now we just need to know how do we stage the classroom so that our students feel this way. All right. Very first thing that we think of with an online course is kind of the atmosphere. What do students experience when they enter your online or digital space? So you want to engage all of the senses, right? Sight, sound. So one of the first things you can do for your course, and I know it sounds silly, is go ahead and put a course image in your course. And I took this screenshot a little while ago. I think the course image is now actually on the right side of your screen. So you'll see a whole menu of options, and you can add a course banner. You can use stock images, or you can even upload pictures of your own. But interestingly, what we've discovered with online students is some of the courses start to look the same. It's just all content, and there's no visual differentiation. And even though students were enrolled in courses that were completely different in field and discipline, they would mix up their classes. So go ahead and set yours kind of apart from the others visually. That'll help them feel like, oh yeah, I remember why I'm in this class. Also, never underestimate how much video can enhance a course. And this is especially true if you have a fully asynchronous course. So you want to get away from just using text exclusively. So when you do a video introduction, go ahead and turn on your web camera just for a little bit. Let your students hear your voice. You can, kind of talk a little bit about yourself, maybe your own interests or hobbies. You don't have to just sit in front of a webcam. You could pick an unusual background, or, if you're an avid gardener, go outside in your garden. That's a great question. So for the landing page or the banner, what kind of picture is preferred? I would say just stick to a regular image. Try to move away from text, because a lot of times students will have tablets or a cell phone or some sort of compact device, and the text gets distorted. But you could do any type of a picture. Something related to the course subject would be ideal, but again, it's your course. You can personalize it however you like. And yeah, so with these video introductions, go ahead and just, discuss your favorite aspect of the class. I've seen some wonderful videos from instructors. You do not have to be a videographer to do this. I had one instructor who talked about how she kept failing math classes, and then when she finally got it, she went on to become a math instructor. So she knows that her students can succeed. Um, I thought that was very impactful. I also had another instructor who was in a rush. And so she recorded her welcome video actually while she was out walking her dog. And so we could see this little kind of potato of a dog throughout the entire video. And surprisingly, her students absolutely loved it. And it was this incredible icebreaker. So as much as we sometimes rely on just welcome discussion boards, if you can incorporate videos and then asking students maybe to upload their own videos in return, this will really help them feel connected to you in the course. So yes, do require introductions. And again, like I said, more than just another discussion board. So what are some things that you can do? You could always use Kaltura, and I use video platform. You could use Flip. It was formerly Flipgrid. I have to check. It may be hidden behind a paywall now. So let me double check on that. You can ask students to upload an infographic or a video collage. They're very creative. They love to do these types of things. You could have them interview each other and then they record their peer interviews. Or they can do things like digital postcards to the theme of their favorite vacation destination, something like that. You could do creative prompts. I was enrolled in a course once where we had to introduce ourselves from the voice of either our car or our pet. So lots of different ways to get to know each other. And if you're curious about what kind of platforms that students might be able to use, I like to recommend Canva. It's an artificial intelligence power tool, but it's free and there's a lot of things that students can do with it. So if you have other favorite tools out there, let me know. I'm always open to new ones. Okay, so now let's talk about getting to know our students. One of the things that you can tell students is, I'll call you whatever you want. Do you have a preferred name? And this is something that they can actually update in My NIU. So you can publish these steps in your course. And it's just like 4 steps. Go to My NIU, click on profile. You click the little plus button above your primary name, and then you fill in the required fields. And so these items that you see in red, these are all the places where the preferred name would appear. The grade roster, the class roster, Office 365, Blackboard, press release on NIU graduates, and even the commencement program. So that's something you can share with your students. You can also tell them about name pronunciation. So this is something that they can add to Blackboard so that, as you're trying to call out somebody's name in class, you know how to pronounce it. So this is where you can just go in Blackboard, you'll click on your name, and then you add pronunciation. Okay, so one of the other things that I had discussed was engaging the senses. Another thing that you can do, this is really primarily geared for those of you who maybe have synchronous session meetings. Maybe you're meeting in Zoom or Collaborate or Teams. We have all these tools at NIU, but sometimes the scariest part is you enter a classroom and it's completely silent. And unless the instructor says anything, we all keep our cameras turned off. So you can ask students to help generate a music list. You can give them some guidance on what is classroom appropriate, but a good way to get them to come into the classroom is to play a new song each class period from one of the students. It's also helpful if you're taking a break. I've had really long courses, and so about halfway through, we would, get a break for go stand up for about 10 minutes. And once the music ends, then it reminds students that they have to come back to class. Now, this is again for those of you who might be doing synchronous session meetings. Sometimes we don't turn on cameras. I know it's a hot button topic, so if you don't want to require your students to turn on cameras, something else you can do is you can ask them to start changing their profile pictures. And each time you meet, you can give them a different, category. Superheroes, mythical creatures, their role model or their favorite industry leader. So this is, again, very helpful for you as an instructor so you don't feel like you're speaking into the abyss. Now at least you'll have a full collage of pictures to look at. And that'll help you kind of infuse personality and warmth into your tone when you're speaking to students in that digital environment. Okay, so those were just some of the things that we can set up before our students even get into the course. So now I want to get into the activities to promote belonging once we start engaging with our students. Did I have any other questions yet? Okay, sounds quiet. So one of the things that I advocate for with helping students feel like they belong in your course is to do some type of activity that promotes student choice. Again, this all goes towards helping to promote student autonomy. I do think that our student population is changing. I know back in 2000, I was going off to college, and at that time, many of the college students were like me, fresh out of high school. Uh, but now we're seeing older students, transfer students, returning students. And so they have a lot of experience and they can share that, with their classmates. So you're going to want to try to give them maybe some topic choice. Now, there are different ways to do this. And I also have, if you'll recall, at the end of this workshop, some information on how to set this up in Blackboard with the technology. But one of the things that you might do if you don't want to just say choose your own topic, right? Because sometimes they go really far, kind of off track. You could give them, 5 different topics, and you could say choose 3 out of the 5 to write on. And then we can use the Blackboard technology to drop the lowest, 2 scores, the 2 questions that they elected not to answer. So this is a way that students can really feel connected to their coursework. They can pick and choose, the topics that they feel is most applicable to them or of most interest. We can also do things with a discussion board. I think a lot of times with discussion boards, either we post maybe a topic or prompt, and then we ask everybody to reply. Sometimes we break them up into groups. Another useful tool that we have in Blackboard, which again, I'll get to at the end, is you can go ahead and you can ask students to self-enroll. So then you're going to have, as many topics as you choose. Maybe you have 3 or 4 discussion topics, and you're going to ask students to enroll in the one that's of interest to them. And you can also cap how many students are allowed in each group. So that way you don't have everybody in group 3. So we have lots of, kind of tools as well as strategies that work well together. The next idea that I have for you is to ask your students to generate their original student work. So this is, one of those higher orders of thinking that we want to achieve. We don't just want students to memorize. Now we actually want them to internalize lessons and to produce their own work. And so there are different ways that you can go about this. You can have them try to simulate labs in their own home. You could ask them to become the presenters. You could do things like ask them to weigh in on case studies. And then we also have this idea where we can ask students to go out into the field, right? Or just to go out into the world and to record. One of the things that we learned throughout this pandemic is that students have a wide array of technology at their fingertips. And some have a lot of technology, some have very little. What we do know is that most everybody has a cell phone, and so they can record videos and such. So don't be afraid to ask your students to even step away from their computer for some of their coursework and then to come back and report what they learned. Okay. Another idea here is to introduce the flipped classroom environment. I feel like that's almost becoming a buzzword, but it really helps in an online classroom if you think of yourself as a facilitator rather than you're leading the discussion. And so this is where you try to make the bulk of your class where students are the ones who are speaking, right? They're responsible for their own learning. So Think about things like lectures, recorded lectures. These might be items that you post ahead of time before students come to class. They could watch a lecture anytime that they want, but now that you're together, maybe in a synchronous class, that's when you want students to go ahead and interact with each other. So what could they be doing? They could be doing group projects. They could be working on, brain teasers, solving problems, or they could be presenters. So there's a lot of different things that students could be doing, but the idea is that we want to eliminate something called passenger syndrome. We want students to take an active stance in their education. And how do we do that? Well, we can introduce gamification. Now, gamification has sometimes a negative connotation with it. People think that you're just bringing in games and you're entertaining the students, and therefore your course is not as rigorous. But that is not true. Gamification, done correctly, done intentionally, can actually help prevent Zoom fatigue, where you're exhausted from talking to your students. And it's also a deliberate strategy that you can use to engage students. And this is true whether you have a synchronous or an asynchronous course. So I can throw out a couple of items that would represent gamification, but maybe some of you have your own favorites. Before the big exam, you might have a Jeopardy style class, right? Where students are doing the review and you're asking them questions, they're earning points, they're competing as teams against one another. That's one way to do it. I know we also have virtual escape rooms. Now, this actually became a huge hit, I know, during the pandemic, but it continues to help students kind of self-pace, as they're preparing for some of their larger assessments. If you've never participated in a virtual escape room, I do have resources on how you can build them, what they look like. But it's basically this idea that you're going to be asked a question, and if you get the question right, you can move on to a more difficult question, versus if you get the question wrong, they might keep asking similar questions until you've mastered a particular concept. So this is something that you can ask students to complete in groups, or it can be just an entirely solo adventure. Does anyone else have specific gamification techniques that they prefer? Not hearing anything? Okay, well, we can talk more strategies. I just want to make sure we get through all of our content today. Oh, I like this. I used to model a game after Who Wants to Be a Millionaire to Who Wants to Be a CPA. That's that's incredible. I love it. Okay. So I do have a couple of other suggestions for you, but I'm going to move on for just a little bit here. One of the other things that I would really like to stress is this idea that you should make sure your students come to you during office hours. I like to do this a couple of times during the semester. And I've realized that if you say that, you're available for virtual office hours, rarely does anyone show up. However, if you ask students to come meet with you, usually during the first few weeks of class, during virtual office hours, even just for 15 minutes, they feel like, oh, I know who my teacher is. There's an actual person there, right? So this is just a great way for you to get to know them. You can ask them what brought them to your course. What do they hope to get out of it? What motivates them to learn? What were bad experiences that they've had in other courses, so that you can try to avoid those pitfalls. If you offer, and when I say offer, but if you require office hours early on in the semester, students are far more likely to actually contact you throughout the rest of the semester if they have questions or concerns. So I like to do this early on, and then I like to do it again later on in the semester. In that particular meeting, I have a specific agenda. So I know one of you said you're an English instructor. I might have them sign up to meet with me, and they have to bring their rough draft. Or maybe I've already graded their rough draft and now I want a conference with them about it. So this will help them prepare for the revision, that type of a thing. So I like to use Microsoft Bookings for this, but again, there's other options. It's just nice to have kind of a sign up page where students can look and see, when you're available, like what days and during what times. And sometimes if I have a synchronous class, maybe I meet on Monday evenings, then I might even cancel one class and say, in lieu of class, I want all of you to pick one of the 15-minute increments that's available and come meet with me. So lots of options. All right, so now I'd like to get some preferences from all of you. So when we think about cultivating engaging content for our students, well, how do we do that? We might look at authors from different cultural backgrounds or different ethnicities. Maybe we want to do opposing interviews, particularly if you want to talk about, a new debate, pro versus con, show them both sides. You can include content that covers generational gaps. How do millennials address something? How does, Gen Z address something? How does, keep it going? Explore gender equity, make sure you've got representation from all groups. And then also, of course, just focus on current events. Students are more likely to internalize their lessons, if they can relate to them. So I do have a question for all of you, and I'd like you to go ahead and type in the chat what you would recommend. And again, no right or wrong answer. It's just to generate ideas. But a finance instructor wants to get students engaged with their coursework, as students have expressed difficulty connecting with the textbook. What types of assignments or activities would you suggest? I'll give you a couple of minutes to come up with something. All right, I see one response. Anyone else have some ideas here? Okay, I see a lot of people saying, well, I'd get students together in groups. I think that's a great idea. I think you could expand it even further and give them a specific task. So maybe you want to give each group a different type of financial plan. You could even try to come up with financial plans for contemporary companies so that they can see, different strategies at work. Maybe you want students to build a financial plan. This can be a great scenario where you can even introduce like a Shark Tank type of competition where each group is going to come up with a financial plan, and then you could invite somebody into your course. You don't have to be the judge, but you can ask somebody else who is a subject matter expert to come in and give them feedback on each of their plans. What works, what doesn't work, have they considered X, Y, and Z? Yes, let them share their personal thoughts, establish a connection to the material. Absolutely. I really like the idea of introducing a concept and then asking them to generate something, to build something. Great. Wonderful suggestions. I also like to solicit student feedback throughout the course. I think it's a lost opportunity if you wait until the end of the semester when you start getting your course evaluations from the students. Some of that information would have been valuable to you if you had learned that early on. So I call these exit slips. They go by a bunch of different names. You could call it surveys. But basically, I ask students to give me some information. And you can do this whether it's synchronous course, asynchronous. You can decide whether it's anonymous. Some instructors prefer to have students put their name on it, and then they can also use these exit slips to track attendance. So pros and cons to a bunch of different ways on how to approach this. But these are some of the questions you could ask them. Summarize today's lesson plan in one sentence. Or tell me what are the main points or topics from the lecture material. That's particularly helpful if you expect students to listen to the recorded lecture before coming to class. Ask them to take the lesson and apply it. How does it relate to current events? If they're learning a new concept, a new definition, ask them where have they observed that in their day-to-day lives. And the last one on the list I know can be a little bit intimidating, but ask students, how could I improve this lesson? What would make it better? So students really like that one too. And you might be surprised, you might get some really helpful feedback. Students have said, what, I loved this activity. I loved working in groups. I want to do this more often. So that's something that you can consider. Okay. So I think we're going to make this in plenty of time. Now I actually wanted to get to the technology piece because I hate just giving you theory without application. So these are just some suggestions, but there are plenty more. One of the things that you can do in your Blackboard course is you can create a virtual meeting place for your students. And you can do this through Blackboard Collaborate. And so what's really nice about it is you can set up a session, kind of like how today all of us are here in a Zoom session. But Blackboard Collaborate means that you can just set up the session and students can hop in and out of it and you don't have to be there. So it's really nice, if you have group projects, you could create one meeting space per group. So if you had 4 groups, each group would have their own meeting place. And it's up to them to decide what day and time they're meeting, but then they could get in there and you don't even have to be present. So I don't know if any of you have ever used that setting, but it can be fantastic. So once you open up Collaborate, you just click the 3 dots. You click Edit Settings. Then you change the setting beside guest link to moderator. Great. Masuma's used that. Wonderful. Did you find it at all helpful? Perfect. It's kind of one of those things where, students are saying, oh, I don't know when we're meeting or how do I set up a meeting? And so then it's already taken care of. So they can just get in there and they can start talking. Something else that I like to use to improve student belonging is actually called Blackboard Ally. And this is something you don't even have to do. It's already done for you, but you can direct your students to this as a resource. So Blackboard Ally, as soon as you upload, say, a Word document, you might see like a capital A next to that. And it just means that there are additional file formats that students can open. So, maybe they have a preference for a different type of format, or, maybe one of these other files just works better with their particular computer. So this is just an example. We even have electronic braille. So that's really exciting just for anybody who wants to access course content. If they're having trouble opening a file, you can tell them, try one of the other formats, see if it'll open for you. So I don't know if anyone's played with that, but it's really just a great feature. We can also use Blackboard Ally to check our course accessibility. And what this means is that it's checking all of your content, everything that you put in your Blackboard course, to see how easy it is to open. And so maybe if somebody had a visual impairment, would they be able to read something? Or, how is the contrast, that type of a thing. And the best part is, this is just something you see as an instructor. Your students don't see it, but it gives you an indicator and it tells you, a score. So mine is at 85%. I'm in the green. That's good. The lower the score, the more your meter turns to yellow and orange and red. So but it also gives you suggestions for how to fix your course accessibility. So sometimes we just have images, but there is no tag. So it'll show you how to add descriptive text. So I highly recommend this tool. It's something fun to play with. You can do it at your own leisure, but every step that you take towards improving your course accessibility means maybe fewer emails from concerned students. Okay. So I did promise you some information about this, the self-enroll discussion boards. So anytime you're in Blackboard, if you see that little gear icon, that's what the red arrow is pointing to. That's an indicator that you can adjust the settings. So you would just click the gear icon and then under group discussion, click assign to groups. And there's all different ways that you can assign groups. The one that I feel is kind of underutilized is self-enroll. So you can decide how many students per group. Maybe you want to cap it at 6 students. So you can just say 6 per group. And then optionally, you can hide enrolled members. So that way, if you're worried that students are only going to sign up for groups where they can, talk to their friends, well, now you can kind of keep it anonymous. They won't know until they get in there. And then the last part is just scroll down and change the group numbers to topics. So instead of it saying, group 1, what are they actually talking about in group 1? And all of these things, if you're scrambling and you're like, oh, I don't know how to do this, by the time I leave this workshop, please just feel free to either reach out to me personally or to the CITL team. We're happy to set up a virtual meeting with you, and we'll walk you through it step by step. So, but this is a great option just to make the grade book do some of the work for you. If you offer your students 5 different assignments, but they only have to do 3, it's a lot of work if you have to keep track of, per student, which 3 they did versus, which 2 did they skip. And so this is something you can do from the grade book. So you would open your grade book and you would click this blue link that says manage overall grade settings. And then you would see, the category. So this particular category was an assignment. And you can change categories, by the way. We can help you with that. And there's a little plus button that says edit calculation rules. And then the third step there is you're going to click enable and you're going to drop scores. So again, if you pretend that I had 5 assignments in this category and I only wanted them to do 3, then I would drop the 2 lowest scores. So I love when technology just makes my grading workflow so much simpler. Now, my suggestion here is the Kaltura mobile app. I am not a paid sponsor, I promise. I just actually really liked this tool. Hopefully you see a little bit of humor here. Phones have come a long way, right? Remember the long cords that always used to get tangled? Then we had the giant cell phones. Then we had the teeny tiny ones. And now we're kind of at the space where our cell phones are actually mini computers and we can take them anywhere. So NIU's video platform is Kaltura. They also have a free mobile application, which I love. It works for Androids, it works for iPhones, and this just means that when students are on the go, if they want to take a video recording, they can upload it directly to Kaltura, and then they're just steps away from inserting it into their class assignment. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. I'm happy to assist and to demonstrate. That would have to be a separate meeting, though. It takes a little bit more time than we have today. So I hope you'll consider this. It's fun. It's exciting for students. I think I had one instructor who asked students to read a poem outside because the poem was all about nature. And then every student had to record a different line. And when you put all of them together, it was the entire poem in various places throughout nature. So lots of exciting things that we can do. Other technology, I use this when students are being too quiet and they aren't responding. And I consider myself pretty flexible. I don't require students to turn on their cameras, but they have to respond. So they have to type in the chat or they have to turn on the microphone. They have to be active participants. So if they are not responding or it's the same students responding over and over again, I share my screen and I just do a Google search for a random name selector. And it'll give you something like a wheel of names. So I'll type in everybody's name and I'll push the button and it spins around and around. And whoever's name I land on, that's who's going to be responsible for answering my next question. So oddly, students are fascinated with this piece of technology. I don't know why, but it works well. So, and then it feels fair to the students. They have not been, picked upon. You aren't singling them out. It was luck of the draw. So yeah, try looking up random name selectors. If you Google it, there's a bunch of them. I liked the wheel of names. And I'm going to give you back, I think, about 10 minutes of your day. But I did want to come up with kind of like this lasting impression for you. So I saw this quote and I thought it was so appropriate. Diversity is having a seat at the table. Inclusion is having a voice, and belonging is having that voice be heard. So if we can help our students get their voices out there, then I think we're creating a very student-centric experience. Okay. Is there any questions that I can answer?
Yes, I do have a question. This is Chi Chen Lee. I am so glad that you mentioned the student actually can record their pronunciation, the pronunciation of their name.
Mhm.
And I look at my class roster. Only one student actually put down the pronunciation. So what do you suggest me to ask student to do that? I mean, obviously, some students' name are very easy to pronounce, but then I always get some difficult ones. And so, do you suggest to like maybe email those students that I have trouble with, or just kind of as a general, you know, ask for a student to record that in the Blackboard?
I think I would start with asking everybody to do it. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the students don't even know the tool exists, which may be
Mm-hmm.
why they've never added that feature. So it might be a great thing just to demonstrate in class or to take a screenshot of, and then ask the students to go ahead and add their name pronunciation.
Thank you.
I just think it's a tool that they don't even know it's there, or the majority of them don't know it's there. But that's a great question. I just wanted to leave all of you with the information on how to get a hold of us. So we do one-on-one. Typically, we do virtual consultations, but if you'd rather meet face to face, just let us know. And that's where we sit down with you, and anything you want to talk about related to your course, we'll go over it. We can demonstrate. You know, if you're getting frustrated with Blackboard, we'll screen share with you, and we'll get it all ironed out. Of course, there are additional workshops you can sign up for, and then our website. So, okay, well, I will go ahead and I'm going to stop the recording.